Hi, I'm Amol K. Patil. I'm basically from Bombay, but now I'm working in Amsterdam and Bombay. Uh, for this exhibition especially, the Forest of Remembrance, the whole idea about coming from is really nearby this one of the chawl, which is initially as a prison, no British time period, and then after that when after independent government occupy and then it's become a more labor society. So mostly no, a lot of sanitized workers and meal workers used to live there. And there's a one floor is kind of, my grandfather also moved first time there. But it's really interesting to how they started new community because it's coming from different places, different Marathi tone of language. And it's Chawl as a different, the scenario also because it's one floor, 32 rooms and 10 by 12 room size. But it's a really dramatical conversation also to when I seen, been through also that Chawl. But making this exhibition actually 2017, me and one of my friend Yogesh, we did really amazing documentation, having interview with a lot of people who live there. And that time they're having conversation about the ration card, which is orange ration card to changing white ration card. But then 2023, I saw the empty whole building because they want to demolish, and initially government declares a heritage, but now there is no conversation over the heritage. And then I thought I should make to document each rooms, different corners, different the wall textures, and because I want to create as a more idea about the background painting from the theater space, and that's the I want to create these small canvases as a different houses as a more dramatical, different theater cubes basically. But that's why I decide to this title also because a lot of people coming from outside from Bombay. So basically they leave farming and then they move for mill jobs and sanitary jobs. And basically the whole forest actually moved to city to finding working in Bombay city. But now again the whole forest is going and no, they're still finding one space to where they can live. So that's why I decided to make these paintings also as a more background theatrical conversation, different houses, different texture. And I want to make this wall create also background because that's the generation, how many generation who live actually in that space, no? That's why the dark blue color before, initial generation they used to paint. Then the bright, which our generation they're using this light yellow, dark yellow. But then I make that textures also because of this whole idea about this giving heritage and skin politics also because of where they used to work, and try to make this installation also to as it is how they use this architecture space, 10 by 12 feet to how they install cupboard furniture, TV and everything. So it's kind of not exactly eye level and anything, but it's kind of how they can try to adjust to live on that space. And I play around to idea also there are images coming from this hanging rope, hanging clothes relation to keeping with this paintings conversation. But I can say more, not exactly I can say as a painting, I feel it's more documentation because it's existential space I want to create, use, and balance that conversation also to where I can blur also, that images. So that's the whole I start work. And then you can see there are a lot of bronze sculptures which is covered with the dust, cotton, debris, which is kind of the conversation where they used to live, an excrement, and so that's the whole idea to know why they moved to city also. And then you can see basically the pedestal, the design basically coming from this housing floor map. So it's a cutout from the shape. So when you remove kitchen part, washroom part, and the corner, so then this floor will be look like this. So that's why I designed this pedestal exactly, different sculptures and different the floor plan cutouts. And I give as a stage format because all figures, the sculptures figures are connecting from my father's script. a script is really kind of people who living together and working also together in sanitized places, but they used to make more community conversation where they used to live. And these are kind of figures basically is kind of more moving, pushing each other, to forcing each other to know how they can raise voices to talk about this whole conversation. And it's kind of more, I feel, I want to create a more moving sculptures because they never had a own space. And that was the conversation where they are still finding one place, living in Bombay city and working also to know, making more comfortable space where they can raise this conversation. So that's why I try to make this whole installation to create that surface with the wall, with the installation, the paintings, how they use the space also to working gloves with where they use theater practice to how they use these character faces. So that's why I try to make that relation, and the installation is kind of more to use it, how is it, they use that space basically. Uh, yeah. And yeah, and there are a lot of elements which I try to play around. These gloves is a direct cast material because it's gloves is somehow really permanent gesture. There are hand and feet also is really permanent gesture in my work because I feel is really too, this hand and feet is really important gesture for me because where they're doing cleaning places, they're doing job. So it's really interesting to how they hold broom and walk 2-3 kilometers. So I feel his hand and feet, there is kind of tool for them. And when they're doing theater practice, it's really interesting to how they use this hand and feet to create that dramatical rhythm on that black box. So I feel it's really important to know how I can play around these two different character with this making no archival body languages to referring from my father's scripts also. And so yeah, that's the whole, I try to make that, the relation Bombay, which is really nearby and showing work in Bombay again. And that's the, want to make that context also. Yeah. And then there are few works which I add for this specific show, especially for this missing body, but there are only hand and feet gesture is there. Uh, and I wrote one small script to influence from my father's script. So it's really tiny script, which is kind of, I can say, as a more one-person bio work, biography. And so it's a kind of using white pant and white shirt is more meal workers costume, but then using hand and feet because normally people are using as a labor only tool format, no? So that's why I'm using only hand and feet and missing body conversation. Then I can, this sculpture actually coming from one of these big protests in 1974 in BDD. That protest when there are a lot of time period actually people want to actually beat a lot of lower caste people in BDD Chawal, and that time they fix grill on BDD doors, and so that's why that image coming from there to make this flat grill body to cover to support on community, and again to raising this hand is kind of more protest grill bodies to holding each other. So that's the work actually I inspire from that time period to how they actually support each other, and that's I try. And yeah, and then I try to make this whole relation as an installation to as a living space mostly, and that's why I try to make this whole corners relation with these corner paintings, and yeah, and that's the color which I want to use it for these canvases, which how they use own architecture space. Yeah, I think the sculptures is more coming from my father's script, and these are characters also which I created. I think this is one image which I actually try to create similar the body language. So this is kind of two characters, basically the husband and wife. The husband is holding wife and carrying water. So it's basically he's moving to finding moving different place to carrying together with the water and wife. So that's I try to make this the sculptures conversation with this and then again you can see the cover with this dust, cotton and debris to to where they used to work and whole demolish idea also to where they used to live there. So that's why I use this character conversation to know holding each other. And again, the same other sculptures also. And again, this is kind of the making the stage format, the pedestal, which is more, again, reference coming from the different houses, floor plan cutout. And then same thing you can see other sculpture also is coming from this because for me it's really interesting whenever I using my father's script. No, it's really interesting when he write dialogue and after dialogue the comma section he mentioned this really amazing light expressions, body language to how the character has to perform. And for me, because I don't have that much images, for me it's really interesting to that part, the comma part, how I can think about this archival body language to create dramatical body, hand gestures and feet gestures to create that sculpture. And that was my part. And somehow I also really into in performance. So that's why I feel to making the sculpture also more moving sculptures. And when the sleeping figures also, you can see as a more, there are holding each other to, pushing and walking, and swimming also relation to create that, because when you see this area, no, as you see, no, as a garbage, but it's somehow where they used to work in, no, sanitized places also is a kind of black, dark water, and somehow they enter and clean that space, and that is kind of relation where they used to work in manhole areas also. So somehow it's kind of the whole body floating and moving, swimming to cleaning this whole, the areas, and that's the whole part of the making these sculptures to know different bodies stuck together. And that's the whole I did with these all sculptures, connection. When you can see this here also, somehow few details. Is a spine here, but then there's a one figure is sitting here and holding another figure. And then again it's connect with this whole, that material to holding each other. But then again it's because they used to work there and that's the they're trying to moving together with that. That's why I want to show this project in Bombay after Berkeley Museum because the whole project connecting with this architecture in Bombay. And these architecture spaces will be going soon. But history will be remembered.